Plastic is damaging to the earth in many ways. We don't even know all of the ways that plastic is actually affecting our ecosystems. It causes a lot of harm to the animals.
I remember sitting and having a beer and watching the ocean, and we were enjoying a long day after we had sampled, and there was an orca that was swimming very close to the shoreline. And then we noticed that it wasn't going down. We were seeing it on the surface a lot more than you typically would see. And it was doing this for 3 days, and this isn't something that orcas do, they're not going to be moving around in that shallow. It was very, very close, a couple of meters to the surf zone. And we didn't think, we thought that it was a bit strange, but we didn't think much of it, and we carried on. And 2 days later, they found it washed up on the beach. And eventually, when they opened up the stomach, they found yogurt tubs, they found crisp packets, and these were all intact. This animal had taken up all of the plastics. It was looking to feed on fish, but it just couldn't. And it eventually died. So it was quite tragic, yeah.
Albatrosses and different kind of migratory birds, they literally are full of plastic, and they feed their chicks plastic because what they do is they can't tell if something that is floating or just below the ocean surface, if it looks like a fish, it will try to eat it and it will ingest it, and then it will regurgitate it to its chicks, and obviously that can block the intestines. So they will either starve or they can be too heavy to fly.
The main issue is that microplastics are being taken up by organisms in the marine environment, and that means that they are moving up the food chain, which will eventually affect what we are eating and our food security. There shouldn't be one organization that is looking at this. This isn't an issue for one organization. It is a very complex issue. It is a very difficult issue to look at. For example, what works in the UK is not going to work in South Africa. It's not going to work in Kenya. It's not going to be the same as what needs to be done in Australia.
Plastic pollution is a growing issue around the world. We all know about the plastic pollution damaging our oceans. However, you might not realise it is having an effect much closer to home. The West Midlands are famous for their large canal system, which is also a victim of plastic pollution. We've come to Dudley Canal Trust to talk to Becky and Derek about the effects that plastic pollution has on the canals.
The worst pollution on the canals, I would say, would be in the built-up areas. If you go, onto the Staffs and Worcester or somewhere on the canals out in the country, again, because you haven't got the population of people there, I think there's probably less issues with pollution.
A lot depends on the direction of the wind, because although no rubbish actually goes into the canal here, if the wind is in the wrong direction, we get everybody else's rubbish. When we first started restoring this canal, you could walk across the canal and get your ankles wet. It was full of every imaginable form of rubbish.
There is endless of supply of rubbish in the canals. We could just keep going forever and ever. I don't think we'd ever feel like we've got to the bottom of it. We often get wheelie bins, shopping trolleys, safes, all sorts of things really. It kind of varies. It always surprises us whenever we do a new clean-up. We always find new surprising things.
Everyday clean-ups is a case of getting rid of things mostly like floating plastic and that sort of thing. But we do hold more elaborate clean-ups where we take a boat out and we can fetch out shopping trolleys, safes, motorbikes, things like that.
The canal is actually very shallow. It sort of ranges in 5 to 6 feet deep, maybe at a push. Any large items in the water can hit the bottom of the boat, throw it out. It can bend and damage your propeller. And when you get rubbish on your propeller as well, you have to take your time then to stop and clear it off.
Many years ago, on a boat in Smethwick, the propeller stalled, and when we finally found out the cause, it was a 50-foot long piece of plastic fuel tank lining.
It just interferes with us as a whole, really. If we've got a plan to use a boat all day, we might get a small bit of rubbish on the propeller and we can only use the boat for part of the day. So it really does impact all boaters, to be honest, anyone on the water. It has a huge impact on the wildlife. It contaminates and pollutes the water where they live, so it can be toxic to them. It can coat the bottom of the canal, create a layer and stop the fish eating any sediment or debris off the canal. Of course, they can get stuck in it, and then the likes of our ducks, you know, it can create confusion, really. They nest on rubbish. There was a group of coots a couple of years back, and one of them had built a nest on top of a plastic coat, so that was a bit sad to see, really.
Seen ducks and other animals eating plastic or out of plastic, which obviously, you know, is detrimental to the animals. But I think plastic will be an issue for fishermen. Obviously, the more people are dumping, the more it gets into the rivers around the canals, which is affecting the wildlife, and I think that's when it will affect the fishing.
Volunteers work tirelessly to clean up our canals to ensure everyone can effectively travel, work, or simply enjoy them.
I've been a Waterbury Recovery Group volunteer for 15 years. Well, I'm the organiser now of these canals, need cleaning all year round because people dump all year round, sadly. We've pulled safes out, lots of safes, bikes, car engines, full engines, and as you've just seen, we've just pulled out the chassis of a caravan, so I'm never surprised with what you pull out of the canals. 42 volunteers and 20 or 30 members of the public turn up, so we're looking at 60 to 70 people will help us today and tomorrow.
It's about 40 of us here today. The majority are with grappling hooks, dragging the canal and getting all the rubbish out, and there's a little workboat comes along, picks up all the rubbish.
I've been doing this since 1993.
For 51 years.
Probably about 10 years.
This is my first one.
I do this once a year, but there's lots of groups as well in the Midlands doing a similar thing most weekends, so there are lots of volunteer groups now taking off, which is brilliant.
To do your part in fighting back against plastic pollution, you can cut down on your plastic use, especially single-use plastics, or go further and research larger projects and volunteer your time at local organisations. If everyone does a little bit, it will go a long way. Help save our planet.